The motorcar stopped at the wrong gates, just as the storm broke over the lake. For the last mile, Cecily Carrow had seen nothing but the white slash of the lamps through rain, the black rise of cypresses, and, when lightning came, Lake Como lying flat and pale under the hills. Twice the driver had shouted through the glass that the lower road was drowned. She had nodded as if she understood him. In 5 years, as Lady Marston's companion, she had learned to nod when men shouted in foreign rain. It saved argument, if not time. Now he leaned back, cap streaming. "Villa Ravello," he said. "I go no farther." Cecily looked past him. The gates stood high and black between wet stone piers. Beyond them, a drive climbed in curves to a house she had not expected. She had been told of terraces, orange trees, a chapel, a landing stage where wedding guests would come laughing by boat. Instead, she saw an ochre front caught by lightning against the hillside, shutters barred, and one row of candles burning already in the hall, though it could not be more than 6 o'clock. "It may be the service gate," she said. The driver shrugged with all his wet shoulders. That was the end of his duty. She gathered Lady Marston's leather dispatch case to her chest. Inside were the wedding papers, lists of trunks, names, rooms, seating, small allergies, the copy of Lady Marston's speech that must be kept from her niece until after champagne, and 2 letters concerning money which Lady Marston had said must not be mislaid. Cecily had kept them dry under her coat. The brim of her hat sagged over one ear. The driver pulled the bell. It clanged somewhere in the wet walls. A dog barked once, far off, then stopped. The gates opened inward, slowly, with no one visible at first. Then a man in a dark oilskin appeared, held up a lantern, and stared at Cecily's single valise, her soaked gloves, and the square case in her arms. "Miss Carrow," she said. "For Lady Marston." The man did not answer. He let the motorcar pass and walked ahead of it up the drive. Lemon tubs stood in the courtyard, their small trees lashed and shining, the fruit pale in the rain. One tub had rolled from its place and struck the marble rim of the fountain. Water spilled down the paving. A striped awning had torn loose above a side door and beat against the wall. The front door opened before Cecily reached it. A tall old woman stood in the candlelit hall, dressed in black silk with a rope of pearls at her throat. Her hair was silver and dressed high, and she held her chin slightly raised, as if the house smelled less damp from that angle. Donna Vittoria Ravello looked at Cecily's wet hem, then at the dispatch case. "You are not Lady Marston." "No, I am Miss Carrow, her companion. Lady Marston was to follow from Milan. The storm delayed her train. That is unfortunate." "Yes." Rain drummed on the steps behind her. Cold water ran down the back of her neck. "I was told," Cecily said, "to come on if there was any delay. Lady Marston wished the papers in the house before the wedding party assembled." At the word papers, the old woman's eyes moved again to the leather case. "You had better come in." Cecily stepped over the threshold. The hall smelled of wax, stone, wet leaves, and something sharper from the lemon trees. Under the frescoed ceiling, candles stood in silver sticks along a console table, their flames leaning in the draught. "The lower road is cut," she said. "There has been a fall of earth near the chapel turn. Your Lady Marston cannot come tonight unless she comes by boat, and no boatman will cross in this weather." "I see. Do you?" Cecily met her eyes. She had been invited because Lady Marston needed her, not because the Ravellos wanted another Englishwoman at table. Her late brother's name still lived in certain ledgers, and one of those ledgers, she knew, had passed through Ravello hands after the war. If she lost this post, there was no aunt with a spare room, no income waiting in a bank. Only gloves turned at the fingers, and letters answered for women who forgot her at lunch. "I see that I am early, wet, and inconvenient," she said. "I shall try not to be troublesome." Donna Vittoria's gaze sharpened. That would be wise. She turned her head. "Teresa, A woman of about 50 came from the passage beside the stairs. She had a broad, pale face and black eyes that did not rest long on anything. A ring of keys hung at her waist and made a small, dry sound when she moved. "The blue bedroom," Donna Vittoria said. Until Lady Marston arrives, Teresa crossed herself almost before she could stop herself. Cecily saw it. Donna Vittoria saw it too. "The blue bedroom," the old woman repeated. "Yes, madam." Cecily kept the dispatch case with her. A footman took her valise. No one offered to have her shoes dried. They climbed a wide stair of veined marble. Rain beat harder on the shutters as they rose. On the landing, portraits stared down. Ravello men with long hands and black coats. Ravello women painted with pearls and folded fans. One with a lapdog done so badly it looked nearly human. At the far end of the corridor, a window gave, when lightning opened the sky, a brief view of the lake below and a small white chapel near the water. Teresa hurried her past it. "This way, miss." The blue bedroom faced the lake. Its walls were hung with faded silk, the color thinned like old ribbon. A narrow bed stood under a crucifix. There was a writing table, a wardrobe of dark walnut, a washstand with a cracked marble top, and shutters barred against the weather. Beside the room, set at an angle in the same wall, was another door. It was plain, painted white, and locked. Teresa put Cecily's room key on the washstand. As she did, the key ring at her waist swung forward. Cecily saw at once that one hook was empty. The brass there had been polished by long use. "What is that room?" Cecily asked. Teresa's hand closed over her keys. "No one uses it." That was not quite my question. Teresa looked up fast, then away again. "It is the music room. It faces the lake. It is kept locked." "For the wedding?" "For always." Outside, thunder rolled along the hills. From below came the faint sound of a door shutting, then voices in the hall. Teresa began to draw the curtains, though the shutters were already closed. "Will Lady Marston's room be near mine?" Cecily asked. "When she comes, she will be in the yellow room. You will help her dress there." Teresa folded the curtain edge too carefully. "Your companion?" "Yes." "And secretary, when needed. Then you will have much to write. There is always much to write before a wedding." She turned to go. "One moment," Cecily said. The wardrobe door stood slightly ajar. Something black showed through the crack. Cecily crossed the room and opened it. A dress hung alone inside, black silk. Not a servant's dress, and not quite mourning. Too fine for storage, too deliberate to have been forgotten. The bodice had tiny covered buttons, the skirt falling in one hard line. There was no dust on the shoulders. Teresa drew in her breath. That should have been taken away. "Whose is it?" "No one's now." Cecily touched none of it. "Does Donna Vittoria know it is here?" Teresa's face closed. "You are cold, miss." "I will send hot water." She went out quickly, shutting the door with care. Cecily stood in the middle of the room and listened to the house. The storm struck the shutters in flat, hard blows. Somewhere below, furniture was being moved, or trunks dragged across stone. She took off her gloves finger by finger and laid them on the washstand. Then she set Lady Marston's dispatch case on the writing table, put both hands flat on it, and thought briefly of the bell pull by the bed, and who, exactly, would come if she used it. Then, beyond the wall, very near, the locked door gave a faint wooden creak. Cecily turned. Rain ran down the shutters. The black silk dress hung behind her in the wardrobe. The forbidden door remained shut. She stood looking at it until the candles burned lower and no one came. After midnight, with the storm gone farther out on the lake, the piano began. Cecily had not slept. The hot water had come lukewarm in a copper can, carried by a maid who kept her eyes lowered and crossed herself when thunder shook the panes. Supper had not come at all. Cecily had eaten 2 dry biscuits from her traveling bag, written a note for Lady Marston, in case the morning brought a messenger, and unpacked only what would not crease. All the while, the locked door had sat in the wall beside her bed. At first she thought the sound was the storm finding some fault in the shutters. Then a phrase came clear. 3 notes, a pause, then a low answering chord. Not practice. The player left space between the notes and did not hurry to fill it. Cecily got up. She put on her dressing gown over her nightdress and found her slippers. For a minute, she stood with her hand on her own door, weighing sense against curiosity. She was employed to be discreet. She was also employed because she noticed what others missed and put small disorder right before it became public. A locked music room beside her bed, a missing key, a black dress in the wardrobe, and now piano music after midnight were not small disorder. She opened her door. The corridor was dark except for one wall lamp burning low near the stair. The storm had moved out over the water, but rain still fell steadily from the gutters. At the far end of the passage, the white door stood ajar. Light showed at its foot. Cecily went to it quietly. The music stopped before she reached the threshold. "Come in," a man said. She did not move. "Or go back to bed," he added. Either would be sensible. His English was exact, with only a trace of Italy in the vowels. Cecily pushed the door wider. The music room faced the lake, as Teresa had said. The shutters were not fully closed. Through their narrow gap, the wet black water showed where lightning still moved far away over the mountains. A grand piano stood near the windows, its lid raised. Dust sheets had been pulled from chairs and left in pale heaps on the floor. Candles burned on the mantel beneath a cracked fresco of Apollo with a lyre, his painted hand broken by damp. The man at the piano had turned on the bench to look at her. He was perhaps 35, perhaps a little more. In candlelight, it was hard to tell. He wore dark trousers and a white shirt open at the throat. Sleeves rolled above his wrists. His hair was black, wet at the temples, as if he had recently come in from the rain. And his face had the fine, used look of a man who dined well and rested badly. Elegant enough. Restful, no. "I beg your pardon," he said. "I woke you, yes. That is plain, at least. I had been told no one used this room." His mouth moved, not quite into a smile. Teresa is loyal to habit. Is habit another word for falsehood at Villa Ravello? He looked at her a little longer then. Not offended. Measuring. "You must be Lady Marston's Englishwoman, Miss Carrow. Forgive me, Miss Carrow. Fabrizio Ravello." He said the name without pride or apology, as if it had long ago become a coat he wore because going bare was worse. Cecily inclined her head, but did not offer her hand. He noticed that too. "You are cold," he said. "I am awake. It is not the same thing. No, it seldom is." On the piano, partly covered by a loose sheet of brown paper, lay pages of music. They were inked in a hand finer than his, she thought, because the title at the top had a slant like a woman's script. The candle shook. She saw one word before the paper slid under his hand. Chiara. He did not snatch at the page. He merely laid his palm down and drew the cover across. A little. Enough. "You play well for a room no one uses," Cecily said. "I play badly for a man who has nothing else to excuse him." That is a practiced answer. Most useful answers are. He came away from the piano. A small brass key hung on a chain that disappeared beneath his shirt. It swung once when he moved and caught the candlelight. Cecily saw the shape of it clearly. Small, blunt-toothed, worn bright at the bow. It would have fitted very well on Teresa's empty hook. Fabrizio glanced down, then back at her. "You have good eyes. They are part of my wages." That and silence? No. Silence is often expected, but not always owed. Again, that slight, unwilling attention. He crossed to a side table and took up a cigarette case, then set it down unopened. Lady Marston chooses useful people. Lady Marston requires them. "And are you useful in many ways, Miss Carrow?" I write letters, keep accounts, remember medicines, mend quarrels when they can be mended, and see that young ladies do not travel without their gloves. A secretary, then, and a companion, and a duenna when the family has mislaid its courage. That is not what I said. It is what you meant. I rarely mean more than I say. No, he said softly. I think you mean exactly what you say. That is rarer. The rain filled the pause. From some distant part of the house came a door closing, then silence again. They stood with the candles between them and the open door behind her. Cecily was aware that she had come into a locked room at midnight in her dressing gown, and that the fact could be used against her if anyone chose. She was also aware that he knew it and had placed himself between her and the inner darkness of the room, not between her and the door. It was a small distinction. She did not miss it. Why is it locked? She asked. The door? The room? To keep people out. That is what locks do. It is not an answer. It is the only one I have tonight. Then I will wish you good night. She turned to go. Miss Carrow! His voice stopped her, not because it was loud, but because it had lost its lightness. She looked back. Villa Ravello is not kind to women who ask straight questions. I did not come here to be loved by the house. No, you came because Lady Marston sent you, because a wedding has its machinery, and someone must oil it. Because you have not the money to leave a post, merely because the walls are damp, and the manners worse. It struck too near. She felt the blood rise in her face, but she kept her hand still. You have inquired quickly. I have ears. So do you. My brother's debts are no concern of yours. No, he said, but others in this house will make them so. There was no insult in it. That made it harder to answer. Cecily stepped back into the corridor. If you wish to warn me, Mr. Ravello, you have done so. If you wish to frighten me, you have not. The name seemed to check him. Fabrizio, he said after a moment. There are too many Mr. Ravellos here, and none of them worth the syllables. I shall use what is proper. Of course you will. He had followed only as far as the threshold. The candlelight stood behind him, drawing his shadow long across the passage. The little brass key lay now flat against his shirt, hidden again except for its chain. Sleep if you can, Miss Carrow. And you? I sleep when the house is empty. That must be seldom. In this house, never. He shut the music room door gently. She heard the key turn. Cecily returned to the blue bedroom, closed herself in, and stood a moment without lighting her lamp. The wall between rooms seemed thinner now, not thicker. On the other side were the piano, the covered pages, the name Chiara, and the man who had put his hand over all three. Toward dawn, the rain ceased. At 8, Teresa brought coffee and a roll, and said the family expected Miss Carrow below in half an hour, as if no music had sounded and no locked door had opened. Cecily, dressed in her plain gray morning frock, pinned her damp hair as neatly as she could, and went down with Lady Marston's papers. Breakfast was laid on the terrace side of the dining room. Sun had come out with a hard brilliance that made every wet leaf shine. The lake below was blue and innocent. Guests had begun to arrive from the upper road in hired cars, bringing trunks, servants, flowers, veils, complaints. Donna Vittoria sat at the head of the table, reading a note. A young bride with fair hair and a peevish mouth drank chocolate. Two cousins argued over motorboats. A priest peeled an orange with grave care. Fabrizio Ravello stood by the open windows in a dark suit, dry, shaved, and wholly at ease. When Cecily entered, he looked at her as if she were merely another late guest. Miss Carrow, Donna Vittoria said, without warmth. You will take coffee after you have seen to Lady Marston's room. Yes, madam. Cecily laid the dispatch case on the side table. As she passed the window, Fabrizio moved his hand a fraction. Not a greeting. Not quite a warning. On his little finger was a smear of black ink. Cecily saw it and looked away. Now, she had something firm to distrust. He held the key to the forbidden room. He had hidden a woman's name under his hand. And in daylight, before his family, he behaved as if the night had been no more than weather over the lake. By 10 o'clock, the courtyard flags had dried white again. Sun lay hard on the lake. The storm already looked improbable. Lemons shone in their tubs. From the terraces came the voices of the wedding party over coffee cups and lists of flowers. One English laugh cutting across the Italian. A tailor had arrived from Como with 2 boxes tied in string. The bride's mother had mislaid her pearls and found them in her own shoe bag. Someone laughed below Cecily's window. Cecily sat in the blue bedroom with Lady Marston's correspondence spread before her. Lady Marston had at last sent a messenger from Milan with notes, corrections, and 3 more instructions, 2 of them underlined. Cecily sorted them by need, rooms first, seating next, the little speech last. She worked with her sleeves rolled above her wrists and a pencil behind one ear. Her coffee had gone cold. On the writing table lay also an old Italian novel she had found in the bedside cupboard. Leather-bound, cracked, a dried violet marked one page. When Cecily moved it to clear space for Lady Marston's guest list, something slipped from the back cover and fell against her wrist. It was a letter. Not whole. The lower corner had been burned away, and one side was browned with smoke. It had been folded small, then opened often enough to soften at the creases. The paper was thin, not Italian. The ink, where it remained, had faded to watery brown. Cecily's finger stayed on the edge of the page. Then she looked at the door. No one was in the passage. A maid's feet went by once, quickly, and were gone. She unfolded the sheet. The first lines were in Italian. She could make out little beyond names and place words. Then, halfway down, the writer had changed to English. F. Must come before dawn by the lower path. They watched the road. I am at the boat chapel. Maria is safe if no one speaks. The little one slept at last. Tell him I was not afraid to go. The burned edge took the next words. Below it, after a gap, the hand went on. If I do not see him, burn this. If I do, there may yet be music when the war is over. At the bottom, where the paper had escaped the flame, was the name. Chiara Balestri. And above it, in the same hand, the date, the 17th of September, 1944. Cecily read it again, slowly, aloud only in her mind. Then she reached for her correspondence book. Her hand was steady. Once, in a Bloomsbury lodging, with a landlady beating rugs in the passage, she had copied a doctor's instructions while the patient was dying in the next room. She copied the English lines exactly, with the date and name. Where the fire had eaten a word, she left a blank. Then she folded the letter and put it inside her glove case, beneath the spare pair with pearl buttons. The case she placed under Lady Marston's corrected seating plan, not hidden well, but among useful things. At luncheon, the long table was laid in the room facing the terrace. Beyond the open doors, the lake flashed between the stone columns. White roses filled bowls along the center. The young bride, Amelia, complained that the chapel would be too damp after the storm. Her intended, a pale Ravello cousin with thin fair hair, smiled and did not answer. Carlo Ravello, darker, older, cut a peach with his fruit knife and watched everyone. Fabrizio sat opposite Cecily, not near enough to speak low. In daylight, the hollows at his temples showed, and the small white scar near his ear. He was civil to the bride, inattentive to the cousins, and silent whenever Donna Vittoria spoke. Cecily waited until Teresa had poured wine and moved back to the service door. Then she said, Donna Vittoria, I am putting Lady Marston's papers in order. She asked whether there were any family names to be mentioned, or not mentioned, in the speeches tomorrow. Donna Vittoria did not look up. The family will instruct Lady Marston. Yes, There was one name I wished not to mishandle. Now Fabrizio looked at her. Cecily kept her eyes on the old woman. Chiara Balestri, should her music be spoken of in memory of her, or would that be painful? Emilia's cup touched its saucer too sharply. The pale bridegroom frowned at his plate. Carlo's knife stopped in peach flesh. Teresa, at the door, crossed herself before she could hide the movement. Donna Vittoria lowered her own knife to the china. Who gave you that name? No one gave it to me. I saw it written. Where? In a paper connected with the house. Fabrizio said very quietly, Miss Carrow. It was warning, not denial. Cecily did not turn to him. Donna Vittoria's mouth had grown narrow. Chiara Balestri died in the war. She drowned during a storm. The music room has been closed out of respect. That is all a stranger need know. I am sorry, Cecily said. I meant no offense. Then do not make one by asking again. Carlo set down his knife. English companions are trained to be tactful. I had understood. Cecily met his smile. We are also trained to keep accounts. For one breath, Fabrizio's eyes moved as if she had touched a note on the piano. After luncheon, Teresa came to the blue bedroom under pretense of fresh towels. She shut the door behind her and stood with both hands folded in the linen. You found something, she said. Cecily was sealing Lady Marston's note to the florist. She did not hurry. Did I? Miss, burn it. That is plain advice from a woman who has not seen what I found. I have seen too much of this house. Teresa's face had lost its guarded blankness. Papers like that do no good. Or they speak for the dead. Teresa took one step nearer. Chiara is dead. She has no need now. Has she not? The housekeeper looked at the locked door beside the bed. He keeps her there, not as they say, not for pride, but grief turns a key as well as guilt. Was she drowned on the 15th? Teresa's eyes filled with terror. Burn it, she whispered, if you have any mercy. Cecily thought of the English lines, the little one asleep, the boat chapel below the villa, and Fabrizio with black ink on his finger at breakfast. No, she said. I don't think so. Teresa's lips moved, but no sound came. Then she gathered the towels to her breast, though she had brought them to leave, and went out. When she had gone, Cecily took the glove case from under the papers and held it a moment in both hands. The villa below her hummed with wedding work. Silk dresses were being pressed. Silver was being counted. Men were riding to Como for more wine. Beyond the shuttered wall, the music room kept its silence. Cecily put the glove case back. Now she knew the house was not merely mourning a girl drowned in wartime weather, and Fabrizio had known she would find the date, or hoped she might. That was worse, and nearer. By evening, the dining room shone too hard. All day, the servants had polished, carried, cut, chilled, folded. By evening, the room gleamed as if no storm had ever darkened it. Murano chandeliers burned above the long table, their glass drops pricking the light into white shards. Silver ran in ranks beside china, painted with blue flowers. White lilies stood in tall vases, and their scent covered, but did not quite conquer, the smell of wax and old stone. Below the terrace, the village made ready for the saints' feast. Now and then a bell tested its voice. Boats moved along the darkening lake with lanterns tied at prow and stern. From the open doors came the water's hush, and a child singing somewhere far off, then being hushed. Cecily wore a dress not hers. It had belonged to Lady Marston's niece the previous season, and had been altered, in haste, by a maid who pinned with her mouth full of thread. The silk pulled faintly under Cecily's arms when she sat, and the waist sat too high for her. Too grand for a paid companion. Cecily knew it. So did everyone at table. It made her more visible, not less. Lady Marston sat 2 places away, newly arrived and fatigued, with her diamonds on and her displeasure under powder. She had asked Cecily in a low voice before dinner, "Have you been careful?" And Cecily had answered, "Not enough to be useless." Lady Marston had not liked that. Fabrizio was seated opposite the bride, at Donna Vittoria's right. He sat very straight and touched nothing he did not need to. Carlo was near the center, where he could reach every conversation and spoil any one of them. For the first courses he behaved well. There was fish from the lake, then veal with lemon, then small artichokes in oil. The bride spoke of flowers. The bridegroom spoke of the weather. A priest at the lower end of the table praised the chapel roof, which had not leaked. Donna Vittoria received praise as she received wine, with little movement. Then Carlo looked down the table at Cecily. "Miss Carrow," he said. "You have been busy among our papers, I hear." The talk thinned at once. Cecily laid her fork down. Lady Marston's papers. But houses confuse themselves, do they not? Particularly when one is not of them. Lady Marston said, "Carlo." "No, madam. I admire industry. A woman who has no fortune must make a craft of usefulness." He smiled, and some poor young man near him laughed because he was afraid not to. Though in Italy we are old-fashioned. We do not always ask our secretaries to judge our dead. Fabrizio's hand closed around the stem of his glass. Cecily saw it. She saw also Donna Vittoria watching, waiting to see whether the English companion would rise, flush, and be dismissed as hysterical or vulgar. She had no wish to help them. "My judgment has not been asked," Cecily said, "yet you give it. No, I ask for the correct date." Carlo's smile hardened, a clerk's concern. "Yes." She reached into the small silk bag Lady Marston had lent her and took out one sheet from her correspondence book, folded once. It was only her copy, not the burned letter. The original still lay hidden in the blue bedroom. She set the page beside her plate. The priest looked down the table. The bride's mother stopped fanning herself. Cecily said, clearly enough for the servants against the wall, to hear, "I copied these lines from a letter signed Chiara Ballestri. It is dated the 17th of September, 1944. The family account says she drowned on the 15th. A chair creaked. Outside, one of the feast bells sounded, then ceased. Donna Vittoria's face had gone quite still. Cecily went on. The English lines say, "I am at the boat chapel. Maria is safe if no one speaks. Tell F to come before dawn by the lower path." They watched the road. "Enough," Donna Vittoria said. Cecily did not raise her voice. "I ask only this. If Chiara Ballestri drowned, where and when this family says she drowned, why did she write from the boat chapel 2 days later?" No one moved. Teresa stood by the sideboard with a sauce dish in her hand and did not stir. Donna Vittoria said, "You will leave the table in a moment if Lady Marston wishes it." "I wish it." "No," Fabrizio's voice cut across hers. It was not loud. It had no polish. That made it more shocking. Everyone looked at him. Carlo reached across the table. "Give me that nonsense." His fingers closed on the edge of Cecily's copied sheet. At the same instant, his elbow struck his wineglass. It tipped, turned once, and spilled red across the cloth. The wine ran toward the page, quick as blood on linen. Cecily snatched the sheet back. Fabrizio was already standing. "Do not touch it," he said. Carlo's face changed. For a second, his dinner mask slipped, and something lean and frightened showed underneath. "It is a servant's tale," he said. "Or hers. Who knows what such a woman will invent, with debts behind her and silk on her back?" Cecily felt Lady Marston stiffen beside her. So the debts had come to table at last. Her brother's folly, her own poor purse, the old shadow she carried behind every door. It hurt, but not where Carlo wished it to. Fabrizio looked at him. "Say my name if you have courage enough for hers." Carlo laughed too quickly. "What name?" Fabrizio's face had lost color, yet his eyes were dark and alive. "Chiara," he said. It was the first time Cecily had heard him speak it. Not as a secret, not as ink hidden under his hand, As a woman called back into the room, where all had agreed to leave her buried, something went wrong at the table all at once. Emilia, the bride, began to cry without knowing why. The priest crossed himself. Donna Vittoria rose, one hand flat on the cloth, her pearls trembling faintly at her throat. "This dinner is ended." "No," Fabrizio said. The old woman turned her gaze on him. "You forget yourself. I have remembered too much." For a moment, Cecily thought he would tell it all there, under the chandeliers, with wine spreading between them, and the village bells waiting below the hill. But he stopped, his mouth shut hard on whatever truth had risen. The old fear, or old mercy, took him again. Donna Vittoria saw it and seized it. "Miss Carrow will go to her room. Lady Marston, you will answer for your companion in the morning." Lady Marston's face was pale. "Cecily, come." Cecily folded the copied sheet and put it back in her bag. She stood. Around the table, no one met her eyes except Fabrizio. His look held apology, warning, and pain. It was not enough. As she passed behind his chair, his hand moved once, as if he might take hers before them all. He did not. In the hall, the chandeliers burned behind her, and the lake air blew in from the terrace. The village bells began again, small and silver in the dark. Cecily went upstairs alone. Behind her, at the long table, Chiara's name had been spoken, and could not be made dead again. Cecily did not go at once to the blue bedroom. She crossed the hall and went out through the side door into the lemon court, then down the 3 steps to the grove. The night had not cleared. Clouds moved low over the lake, and the lanterns on the boats below swayed in the dark. The trees still held rain from the afternoon heat. When she brushed a branch, drops fell cold on her bare arm. She had no wrap. The borrowed silk caught on leaves and shone whenever houselight reached it. She disliked the dress now. It had made a fine target at dinner. From below came the work of the village feast. A hammer struck wood. Men called to one another by the landing stage. A bell rang 3 times, then stopped. The air smelled of lemon peel, wet earth, and crushed grass under her shoes. She heard him before she saw him, not steps. Fabrizio moved too quietly for that. A match flared near the low wall, then went out, unused. "Miss Carrow," he said, "I am not lost." "No." "Then you need not rescue me. I have made a poor trade of rescue." She turned. He stood a little way off, black against the darker trees, still in evening dress, his white shirt front the only clear thing about him. In his hand he held her wrap, Lady Marston's, rather, borrowed like the dress. "You left this in the hall." "I left a good deal in the dining room. Yes." He came nearer and set the wrap over her shoulders without haste. He did not touch her skin, yet she felt the care of how he placed the cloth, high against the throat, not possessive, not casual. It made her want to step back, or closer. Neither was convenient. Chiara was brave, he said. Cecily drew the wrap close. "That is not an answer. It is the first one. Then give me the second." He looked past her toward the lake. "She was to marry my cousin, not Carlo. Another, a harmless young man who loved comfort more than people. The families approved. She did not. And you?" "I was younger and thought music made cowardice beautiful, if one named it sorrow." She had not expected that. "Did you love her?" "Yes." He said it plainly. No flourish, no plea for pardon. The lemon leaves moved above them. Somewhere near the fountain, a servant closed a door. "Then why let them say she drowned?" Cecily asked. His face tightened. "Because some dead deserve one room where no one lies about them." "You lie everywhere else on their behalf?" He looked at her then. "You strike cleanly, Miss Carrow." "I am trying to see the wound. You see enough." "No, I see what you set out for me. Chiara brave, the family cruel, the music sacred." All true, perhaps, but you have explained her, not yourself." For a moment he was silent. Then a breath of wind came off the lake, sharp enough to lift the edge of the wrap. He reached out, almost without thinking, and caught it where it slipped from her shoulder. This time his fingers touched the silk at her upper arm. Through the thin cloth, the warmth of his hand was unmistakable. Both of them knew it. He let go first. A low roll of thunder sounded behind the mountain. Not the full rage of the first night, but a warning. Rain began suddenly, thick drops striking leaves and stone. "Come inside," he said. "The house is worse than the weather." Yes, but the piano is dry. She might have refused. She should have, perhaps. Instead, she went with him through the side passage, past the shuttered breakfast room, up the servants' stair, where the plaster smelled of damp lime and candle smoke. No one stopped them. The house had gone to its corners after dinner, nursing shame and anger like broken glass. At the end of the corridor, Fabrizio took the brass key from beneath his shirt. Cecily watched him fit it into the music room door. The sound of the lock was small. It seemed loud. Inside, he did not light the chandelier. He took one candle from the passage lamp and set flame to two others on the piano, then to the candles on the mantel. Light spread slowly over the room. The cracked Apollo, the white dust sheets folded now over chairbacks, the tall shutters closed against rain. The piano opened like a black wing. On the stand lay the score. He did not cover it. "Read," he said. Cecily went to the piano. The first page was written in a fine, slanted hand, not Fabrizio's. At the top, in Italian, was a title she could not fully translate. Beneath it, in English, were 4 lines, crossed once and written again. "When the lake is dark, keep the lamp low. When the road is watched, take the water. If I do not sing, remember me whole. If I do not weep." The initials at the corner were CB. Cecily touched only the edge of the page. She wrote the words and the first melodies. I was to set the rest. He stood behind her, not close, yet the room had narrowed around them. Afterward, I could not finish them. I can only play the place where they stopped. He sat at the piano and struck 3 notes softly. Cecily knew them at once. The phrase from the night before. 3 notes, a pause, then the low chord that did not settle. "The house hears that and thinks it is grief," she said. "It is, and guilt." He did not answer. Rain beat harder against the shutters. One candle guttered and recovered. Fabrizio looked up at her. "Give me your hand." She should have asked why. She did not. He took off her glove, finger by finger. It was an evening glove of Lady Marston's, too long in the thumb. He drew it away with such grave attention that the act seemed neither servant's work nor lover's boldness, but something older, a vow made before speech. He laid the glove on the piano lid. Then he set her bare fingers over the keys. "Here," he said. "This is where it will not resolve." His hand covered hers, light but sure. He pressed 2 of her fingers down. The chord sounded under them, dark and suspended. Neither grief nor peace. She felt the vibration through the bone of her wrist. He moved 1 note. The whole sound changed, not healed, only opened. Cecily stood very still. His shoulder was near her waist, his bowed head near enough that she saw 1 silver thread at his temple, 1 small scar above his ear, half hidden by hair. She wanted to touch it. The wanting came so sharply that she drew breath. He heard. He looked up. For a moment, the locked room, the letter, the dinner, the old name between them all, drew together into 1 bright, dangerous point. His hand still held hers on the keys. His face had no charm in it now, only need, kept hard under discipline. "Cecily," he said. It was the first time. Her name in his mouth was not a liberty. It was worse. She withdrew her hand. "Where were you when she died?" The silence after the chord was deeper than the chord itself. Fabrizio stood. He turned from her and put both hands on the edge of the piano. Do not ask me that tonight. I must. No. That I must answer for both of us. She picked up her glove, but did not put it on. Her bare hand looked pale in the candlelight. You want me to believe in the room, in the music, in the gentleness with which you take a glove from my hand. I do believe in them. That is the danger. He shut his eyes once. She went on, but I will not trade truth for music, not for silk, not for candlelight, not for a man who warns me kindly and hides the knife. There is no knife. There is always a knife in a house that lies. He faced her then. If I tell you, it touches the living. It already has. The rain slackened. From far below, the bells began once more, soft through the wet dark, marking the hours before the feast. Cecily moved to the door. Leave the key in the lock, she said. His face altered. I cannot. No, that is what I am beginning to understand. She opened the door herself and stepped into the corridor, with the glove crushed in one hand and the sound of the unresolved cord still under her skin. Behind her, Fabrizio did not call her back. He only turned the key after she had gone. By morning, the villa was dressed for the feast. The storm had left the sewn flags damp in the shade and the lake hard blue beyond the balustrade. Sun lay on the terraces. In the courtyard, servants carried tubs of lemon trees back to their places. White cloths were being shaken from upper windows. From below, in the village by the water, bells began for the saints' procession, not yet in full peal, only the thin striking drifting over the lake. Cecily stood in the blue bedroom and looked at the open drawer of her writing table. Her room had been searched. Not roughly, that would almost have been easier. Whoever had done it knew drawers, knew valises, knew the little ways a woman packed when she had only one good dress and must make the rest do. Her stockings had been folded again, but not as she folded them. The lining of her hat box had been lifted. Her glove case lay on the washstand with one pearl button undone. The original letter was gone. For a moment, she did not move. Then she crossed to the wardrobe and took down her gray coat. In its inner pocket, under Lady Marston's corrected seating plan and the draft of the bride's thank you note, was her narrow correspondence book. She opened it to the page where, in her own hand, she had copied Chiara's English lines. Boat, chapel. 2 days after, Maria safe if Fabrizio comes before dawn. She shut the book and pressed it under her arm. The black silk dress still hung in the wardrobe. One hem turned a little on the hook. Cecily looked at it once before she closed the door. On the landing, the house was full of footsteps. Bridesmaids called for pins. Ma'am laughed too loudly downstairs. Somewhere Teresa was scolding a maid over flowers for the chapel. The wedding had not stopped because a dead woman's letter had been stolen. It went on all the same. She went down with the correspondence book under her arm. Carlo Ravello waited for her on the marble stair. He had placed himself where the light from the high window fell behind him, leaving his face in shade. He wore mourning clothes, too carefully chosen, a pale carnation in his buttonhole, and kid gloves held loose in one hand. He looked like a gentleman until one saw where he was standing. Miss Carrow, he said, you rise early for a person who has done so much mischief. I have work to do. Yes, English ladies always have work. Lists, letters, little books. His eyes went to the one she carried. A woman in your position learns to be useful. She would have passed him, but he moved one step lower. My brother's debts have been much quoted in this house, she said. You are late to the subject, not late. Careful. He drew one glove through his fingers, smoothing it flat. Lady Marston is a woman of reputation. She cannot keep a companion who rummages in bedrooms, repeats family grief, and invents scandal to improve her place. I invented nothing. No, a half-burned paper found, copied, then flourished at dinner. It makes a scene. And scenes cost money. You have none. Cecily looked past him to the hall below. Donna Vittoria stood by the great table speaking to the priest. Teresa crossed the paving with a tray of candles and did not look up. "You are in my way," Cecily said. Carlo smiled then, without warmth. "I can be in more ways than one. There are men in London who still remember your brother's notes. There are ladies who will not employ a companion once her name is breathed over cards. Leave before luncheon, Miss Carrow. Say you are unwell. Take the carriage to Como. If you stay, you will leave with no character at all." She saw Lady Marston's face plainly enough, the shut mouth, the careful regret. After that, one door, after another. The marble under her hand was cool. She kept her fingers spread on it. "Is that why Chiara had to go too?" she asked. "Because she would not be ruled by what men might say?" A muscle went at his jaw. "Do not use her name." "Everyone gives that order in this house." "Then obey it." The bells below began again, nearer now, and with them came the first thin sound of children singing. Carlo stepped aside at last, making a bow of it, and Cecily went past him down the stair. In the side passage by the lemon court, she heard Fabrizio's voice. She stopped before she meant to. He stood with Teresa near the service door. His back was half turned, one hand on the lintel, the other holding folded notes. Teresa's face was pale and set. Fabrizio put the money into her hand and closed her fingers over it. "Keep her away from the boat chapel," he said, "until I can speak. If Carlo knows she means to go there, he will not frighten only her." Teresa shook her head. "You should have told her last night." "I know. Then tell her now." "I must first find the letter." Cecily stepped into the passage. "No," she said. "You must first find the truth, and say it while I am still in the room." Fabrizio turned sharply. The notes in Teresa's hand gave a dry little crackle. Cecily. It was the first time he had used her name plainly before another soul in the house. Too late. "You paid Teresa to keep me from the chapel? To keep you from Carlo?" "That is not what I asked." "Yes." Teresa looked down at the stones. Fabrizio came one pace toward her. "He searched your room. And you knew he would." "I feared it, but did not tell me." There were hollows under his eyes she had not seen in the candlelight. "I was trying to gain an hour. You have had 12 years. Behind him, the service door stood open to the courtyard, and sunlight cut the passage into bright bands. He said, "Lo, there are names that cannot be dragged into light without harm." "And who appoints you keeper of the harm?" She held the correspondence book tightly enough to bend its cover. Chiara was hidden. Maria was hidden. "Now I am to be hidden, kept from the chapel, managed for my good. Call it what you like. It is still a locked door." He drew breath as if the passage had shortened. Donna Vittoria had come from the hall. Behind her were the priest, two cousins, the fair-haired bride with her veil pinned badly under one ear, and Lady Marston, still travel-worn, her face full of alarm and displeasure. Carlo stood at the foot of the stair, listening with one hand on the marble newel. Cecily turned so all of them heard. "I asked for the carriage to Como," Lady Marston said. "Cecily, what has happened?" "Too much and not enough." Cecily looked at Fabrizio. "I will not stay in this house for music, or silk, or kindness in the dark that is denied by morning." Donna Vittoria's black eyes sharpened with relief. "The carriage will be ordered," Fabrizio said. "No," Cecily answered before the old woman could. "You have no right to forbid me." "No," he said. His voice was rough now. "I have no right." That was all. He gave her that much, and nothing more. She went upstairs to pack with Lady Marston calling after her, and did not turn back. In the blue bedroom, the shutters stood open to the feast day sun. Cecily put her few things into the valise. Gloves, brush, 2 blouses, gray dress, correspondence book beneath the folded chemises. She kept her hat on. She would not be caught weeping in that room. The key turned in the door. At first, she thought Teresa had locked it by mistake. Then Carlo's voice came through the panel, soft and close. "You should have given me the little book." Cecily crossed the room. The handle would not move. "Open this door. In time. The carriage can wait. The procession cannot. Half the village will be at the gates, and no one will hear one Englishwoman over bells." His steps moved away, then stopped by the adjoining wall. She understood. The music room. A moment later, she heard the scrape of a key there too. He was searching again, not her valleys now, but the room beyond, the room where Fabrizio had kept his dead and his silence. A chair dragged. Paper shifted. The piano gave one dull note, struck by accident. Cecily beat once on the bedroom door, with her open palm. "Teresa." No answer came. Outside, down in the village, the bells broke into full peal. The first procession candles, small even in daylight, moved along the road below like bits of wax fire against the lake. Cecily stood between the locked door and the wall that held the music. Then, from beyond that wall, there came another sound, not Carlo. A key driven hard into a lock. The music room door opened with a force that shook the wall. Cecily heard Carlo swear. A chair went over. Then Fabrizio's voice, no longer low, no longer hidden for the sake of any Ravello piece. "Leave it where it is." There was a silence, sharp and brief. "You have gone mad," Carlo said. "No, I have been sane too long." The key turned again, but this time in the bedroom door. It opened, inward. Teresa stood there with one hand pressed to her mouth. Behind her, in the corridor, were two maids, the young bride's mother, and Lady Marston, white with anger and fear. And beyond them, at the threshold of the music room, Fabrizio stood with the brass key in his hand. He did not put it back on its chain. He set it in the lock on the outside of the open door and left it there. No one moved. "The room is open," he said. "Let them all see it." Cecily picked up her valise, then set it down again. She took the correspondence book from beneath the folded linen and walked past Teresa into the music room. Sunlight filled it. No candle could have done what the morning did. It showed dust on the carved chairs, the cracked Apollo above the mantel, the piano with Chiara's score uncovered, the sheets Carlo had flung aside in his search. A black glove lay on the floor. Carlo stood by the window, his carnation bent, his face no longer shaded. Fabrizio looked at Cecily. "I should have opened it before," he said. "Yes, I should have told you, yes." No pardon was asked. None was given. Not there, not yet. He turned to the household crowding the corridor. "Go down, all of you," to the courtyard. Donna Vittoria appeared at the end of the passage, leaning on her stick, though she had not needed it the day before. "This is my house," she said. "It has been," Fabrizio answered. "Today it is witness." They went down together, not like a family, but like people summoned. Cecily walked with the book in her hand. Fabrizio did not touch her. She was glad of that. It let her keep her footing. The courtyard was already half full. The village saints' procession had reached the gates. Men carried a small gilded figure on a platform heavy with white flowers. Women held candles cupped against the lake breeze. Children in clean shirts stood restless beside their mothers. The priest had come out from the hall in his stole. The family's legal witness, a dry little man with spectacles and a sealed leather folder, stood near the fountain as if he had been set there by Providence or good housekeeping. Wedding guests spilled from the terrace steps, silks and morning coats caught in the hot light. Servants stayed near the walls, but they stayed. No one sent them away. Below, the open windows of the music room, Fabrizio stopped. Donna Vittoria stood by the marble table where candles for the chapel had been laid in rows. Carlo took a place near her, but not too near. Teresa stood behind Cecily, twisting her ring of keys until they clicked. Fabrizio said, Miss Carrow has something to read." Cecily opened a correspondence book. Her voice, when it came, was plain enough. She was glad of that. She had copied household accounts through grief, train times through fever, menus while young ladies sobbed over pearls. A clear hand and a clear voice were not small things. "This is copied from a letter signed Chiara Bellestri," she said. "The original was hidden in the blue bedroom and removed this morning after my room was searched. I saw it. Teresa saw it. The date was the 17th of September, 1944. A murmur went through the guests. Donna Vittoria's hand tightened on her stick. Cecily read, "I am at the boat chapel. Maria is safe if no one speaks. Tell F to come before dawn by the lower path." They watched the road. "I am not afraid for myself, but for the child. If I do not see him, burn this. If I do, there may yet be music when the war is over." She closed the book. "Your family said Chiara drowned on the 15th, Cecily said. "In the storm, by accident," she wrote 2 days later from the boat chapel. The village bells rang once, then fell still as the procession halted at the gate. The priest looked at Donna Vittoria. "Is this true?" The old woman said nothing. Teresa stepped forward. Her face looked older in the sun. "I saw the letter," she said, "years ago, and again when Miss Carrow found it. I was told to burn it. I did not. This morning, I took it from her glove case because Signor Carlo told me she would sell it." Carlo laughed. It was a poor sound. "A servant's fright." An Englishwoman's copy. "Is this law now?" "No," said the legal witness, "but it is testimony, and there are records that may answer it." Fabrizio moved then. He came to the marble table and stood beside Cecily, not before her. "I will answer it." Donna Vittoria said, "Fabrizio, be silent." He looked at her with a grief so old it seemed almost calm. "I have been." No one spoke after that. He faced the courtyard. "I loved Chiara Bellestri," he said. "She was promised elsewhere because this family found advantage in it. During the war, she carried messages through the lake villages. She helped hide a child, Maria, whose parents had been taken north. I knew. I helped her." A little wind moved the candle flames in the villagers' hands. "On the night she left the villa, I unlocked the music room and took her through it to the lower path. I gave her money, papers, and my mother's black cloak. I was to meet her before dawn at the boat chapel. I came too late." His voice held. Only his hands showed the strain, flat on the marble table. "I moved what I found there, papers, a scarf, blood on the stones. I let the lake and the family keep their lie. I let them say she drowned. Later, when suspicion turned to me, I did not fight it. I thought, disgrace was a small price if Maria lived, and Chiara was not dragged through drawing rooms as a woman who ran to a lover, or betrayed men in wartime, or shamed a house that had never deserved her." Cecily looked at him then. Not at the elegant man, nor the midnight pianist, but at the man who had kept one wrong shape so long that it had grown into his bones. "But I did not betray her," he said, "and I did not kill her." Carlo shifted. Fabrizio turned to him. "You told them the route." "No. You had followed her. You knew of the lower path. You told the men at the checkpoint she would pass the boat chapel before dawn." Carlo's face went gray under its summer color. "You cannot prove that." Teresa lifted her head. "I heard you," she said. Carlo stared at her. "In the pantry," she went on. "You were drunk. You told old Ravello you had only meant to stop her. You said she would have come back to you if she were frightened enough." A sound came from the villagers, low and harsh. The priest crossed himself. Donna Vittoria closed her eyes. "You buried it," Fabrizio said to her. "You buried Chiara under a storm to save a wedding that never happened, and a name that deserved to fall." The old woman opened her eyes again. For once, there was no command in them. "She was dead," she said, The house was not. The house has been dead ever since. The legal witness stepped forward. I will take the statements here, and again, in writing. The police in Como must be told. Carlo made one movement toward the side passage. 2 village men blocked him without haste. No one struck him. That made his fear plainer. The bride began to cry quietly. Lady Marston sat down on the edge of the fountain, then remembered herself, and stood again. The servants did not move. Teresa held out her keys to Fabrizio, but he shook his head. No, keep what is yours. The brass key stays in the door. He turned to Cecily. The carriage to Como waited beyond the courtyard arch. Its horse stamped in the sun. Her valet stood beside it, where someone had carried it down. A very neat life could still be made from leaving. Difficult, poor, perhaps lonely, but clean of Ravello marble and Ravello lies. Fabrizio seemed to know each part of that thought. I cannot offer you safety, he said. Not here, not with my name. I cannot say the past is done because witnesses have heard it. It will go on hurting. If you go, I will not follow to persuade you. If you stay, it must not be because I shield you. I have done enough of that badly. He took a ring from his waistcoat pocket. It was not showy. A narrow gold band, old, with one small dark stone. He held it on his open palm. I ask you before them all, because I failed you before them all. Stay, if you choose me, not the villa. Not the music, not the story I made of it afterward. Me, with what I have said. Cecily looked at the ring, then passed it to the open windows above. The music room lay in full daylight. Chiara's pages rested on the piano, where all eyes might see them. The brass key shone in the door. She thought of the night he had placed her hand over the unresolved chord. She thought of the morning he had paid Teresa to keep her away. She thought of Chiara writing, "If I do, there may yet be music when the war is over." You kept the lie one beat too long, she said. Yes. I will not live behind a door you lock for my good. No. And I do not choose this house. His mouth tightened once, then stilled. Cecily put out her hand. I choose the man whose lie I now understand. He slid the ring onto her finger. He did not kiss her before them all. He only took her hand, and his hand was cold, despite the sun. The procession moved on at last. Bells rose from the village. Candles went past the gates like small flames carried into noon. At dawn the next morning, the lake was pale under a clean sky. In the music room, Chiara's score lay uncovered on the piano. Its last page weighted with the brass key. The shutters stood wide. Cecily and Fabrizio walked down the cypress path toward the landing stage, and behind them, at the end of the corridor, the forbidden door stood open.